And hello ladies and gentlemen, this is the Steven Out. We are back with another Batman 66 episode review. Today we'll be reviewing the last two-parter of Season 1, beginning with the first one, Fine Feathered Fiends, the return of the Penguin. So without further ado, let's get into the review. Our episode begins with Alfred on a casual shopping day when he goes to a fish store to buy some caviar, where he meets some very peculiar and strange looking employees and customers. Whilst inspecting the new caviar intending for him to purchase, the umbrella falls on him and essentially trapping him, whilst the owner comes with an umbrella, sticks it under the other umbrella with some knockout gas, and essentially Alfred is knocked out. The police later get a hold of this when one of their officers says in an exposition that they saw Alfred being taken away into a car. They've inspected the place and found an umbrella with the smell of caviar, and it was also found out to be a trick umbrella. With that, the police come to the logical conclusion that Alfred was kidnapped by none other than the Penguin. They then give call to Batman and Dick, explain everything, and to their horror when they find out that Alfred had supposedly been kidnapped by the Penguin, they begin to freak out. Now this really shows the relationship that these two have with Alfred. They then slide down the bat poles, we get to the opening credits, and they are now at Gotham Police Station. Batman congrats Chief O'Hara for deducing that it was the Penguin, but the thing is, Chief O'Hara says, what would the Penguin want with Alfred? They then come to the conclusion that this week would be the multi-millionaires dinner, where all the millionaires would come and donate a large portion of their money to a chosen charity. And realizing that Alfred is the main caterer of that affair, it easily could conclude that he would easily know where the location is, because it's always shrouded in mystery to avoid publicity. Realizing that if Alfred would know, if the Penguin could break him, he could find out where the location is, and with this huge tons of money at stake, this would be something for the Penguin to do. Realizing that, Batman wants to go and overlook the scene of the crime to come to their conclusion. Whilst this is happening, we head to the waterfront, where the Penguin and his crew are trying to break Alfred. Although the Penguin's henchman trying to break him is not working, Penguin takes a different approach. He puts him in what is known as the Penguin box, and essentially brainwashes Alfred to reveal the location of the multi-millionaire's dinner as soon as he knows about its location, and also when he telephones him. And just as Batman and Robin are investigating the waterfront, they find, a piece of paper that possibly could help them, which is essentially an appetizing thing, realizing that Alfred would have been here. Eventually, they get a call on the bat phone through the Batmobile, where Commissioner Gordon and Chief O'Hara said that they have found Alfred, and that the whole thing might have been simply a false alarm, but Batman doesn't believe so. He then goes back to the Batcave to have a conversation with Alfred, but he does this, and though they tell everything they know, but Alfred says nothing has happened. He bought the caviar to the Russian embassy, but he starts having this twitch. Batman and Robin are getting concerned about him, so what they do is they show him some pictures. Two of them which are mostly about the pictures of the Penguin, and two of the recent goons, Octopus and Shark. They have a third goon, of course, Swordfish, which will not be shown until later in this first part. Anyway, realizing that Alfred doesn't recognize them, raises a flag. However, they can't do that now, as Alfred says that they have a rehearsal dinner, in which they essentially will be a sort of rehearsal for the actual main event, and as a result, they quickly get changed, go upstairs, and mingle with the guests. And it's a really nice scene, really fun, and nothing really too glamorous about. But the plot is furthered, however, when one of the guests has a bite of one of Alfred's appetizers, entrees, and when he does, there's a fish hook in one of the things. Alfred's believes must have fallen out of his morning coat, and with that raises another flag for Bruce, and he and Dick go down back to the Batcave and manage to find out that the fish hook is located at a certain Gotham pier. Realizing that's the possible location, Batman and Robin make their way there. But little do they know that this was a trap set for Penguin. He knew as soon as Alfred came back and with the whole thing would get on Batman's radar. So he set a trap knowing that they could track it to this pier and essentially investigate the place. And just as they enter the, well, I guess you could call it warehouse, when they come into contact with a forest of umbrellas. And the umbrellas start popping up and a bat fight breaks out between the Penguin and his crew. But the crew are immediately victorious by knocking them out with penguin gas. And what they decide to do is put Batman and Robin in a vacuum tank. With them in it, they're then tied up and locked in this tank filled with a bunch of balloons. And as they are sucking out all the air of the vacuum tank, the balloons begin to pop. And as soon as the last balloon pops, all the air will be gone. And that's where we end our cliffhanger. How are Batman and Robin gonna get out of this trap? Well, we have to find out in part 2. So far, everything remains the same. For me, the policemen are really bumbling in this episode. Though it makes sense to call up Batman and Robin because they've had an encounter with the Penguin before, and Shiva Hara does deduce it is Penguin thanks on the logic alone, they missed the clue that Batman and Robin picked up, and it wasn't even that hard to find. I like how this is more personal for Batman and Robin, Bruce Wayne, and Dick Grayson in this first part of this time around because of the close relationship they have with Alfred. And I like how Alfred is playing a bit of a role in the story. And essentially, Alan Napier, who plays Alfred, is really doing a phenomenal performance here. And Aunt Harriet, though it has very little scenes, for me, she still lightens up the room. But of course, we all know the real reason why we love these episodes. Burgess Meredith as the Penguin. First off, everything you expect from him is still there. And I like how, he's really thinking about this caper and, the lengths he's willing to go through to order for make it to succeed. And there's nothing really that needs to be said about his performance. Is what you expect from Burgess Meredith. And that's all I can say. Nothing really hugely changes, however, I will admit. Which, I will admit, we're going to get to in the whole thing. Flying Feather Fiends is a fun episode and first part. But however, when you look at all the plots the Penguin's done this season, such as, pretending to reform and go straight, or trick Batman into making a caper for himself, I will admit this is the first time we actually see him come up with his own caper. And essentially, him hiding out on the waterfront is an iconic, is something that the Penguin would definitely do, especially for modern comics. However, I will admit, compared to his personal grand plans, this one does feel a bit more tamer. But there's nothing wrong with that, as long as the episode is good. And so far, I have absolutely no complaints. And the death trap that Batman and Robin are currently put in is pretty good. For me, Fine Feather Fiends is also a good title for a Penguin episode. Burgess Meredith is just owning the role here. And for me, it makes sense to end this season on an established villain that everyone loves. And there we have it, Fine Feather Fiends, a fun, really pumped, really fun episode. So far, part 1 is doing really well, with a very interesting death trap. But how are Batman and Robin going to get out of it? Well, we have to find out in the next part. So tune in next time when we review Batman Makes the Scene. So tune in for the same Steven time, the same Steven hour, and the same Steven channel. And ladies and gentlemen, so long for now.